Right now, you are listening to the thoughts of the most powerful man on earth. There is nothing you need to do right now. Just listen. An emperor who commanded armies that shook the ground. A man who could decide the fate of millions with a single wave of his hand. History remembers him as the philosopher king. But deep inside the walls of his palace, Marcus Aurelius was fighting a war that no one else could see. It wasn't a war against barbarians. It wasn't a war against plague or famine. It was a war against himself. There was a specific fear he never dared to speak out loud to his generals, a fear that kept him awake while the empire slept. We are going to open his private journal and confront the man he was afraid of becoming. Marcus Aurelius was not like other rulers. Most emperors built monuments to their own glory. They hired poets to write flattering stories about their bravery. But Marcus, he wrote only for one person, himself. These private notes, which we now call meditations, were never meant to be read by you or me. They were not philosophy lectures. They were quiet reminders, personal reflections, notes from a man trying to stay grounded in a world that rarely allowed silence. Imagine the pressure. Everyone around you agrees with you. Everyone laughs at your weakest jokes. Everyone is careful with every word they speak. In that kind of silence, truth slowly fades, and hidden between the lines of his journal, we find his quiet realization. Absolute power does not only corrupt, it reveals. To understand his fear, you must understand the color purple. In Rome, the emperor's robe was dyed with Tyrian purple. It was rare, it was expensive, and it carried a strong, unmistakable presence. Once it touched your skin, it was almost impossible to wash away. Marcus wrote a quiet warning to himself. Do not be dyed purple. He was not speaking about clothing. He was speaking about his soul. He had seen what the throne did to the men before him. Nero, Caligula, men who began as ordinary humans and slowly lost themselves. Marcus understood that power is like a slow-acting poison. It does not strike all at once. It gently dulls the senses. First, you stop listening to advice. Then, you stop noticing the feelings of others. And one day, you look in the mirror and no longer recognize who you have become. This was his fear, being quietly shaped by the role he played. Marcus understood something most people never notice. We often assume that harm is a sudden choice, like jumping off a cliff. But Marcus knew that losing your character is not a jump, it is a drift. It happens slowly, one small compromise at a time. One moment of arrogance you chose not to correct. One truth you softened because it felt easier. One action you justified as necessary. In his journal, he wrote, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years." He was not only reminding himself that life is short, he was reminding himself that character erodes quietly. If you stop rowing against the current for even one day, the river of the world will carry you downstream. And down that river lies the person you never intended to become. Now, gently look at yourself. You may not be an emperor. You may not command legions, but the test is exactly the same. Today, the purple dye wears a different shape. It looks like approval. It looks like the quiet hunger to be seen and accepted online. It looks like climbing ladders that were never really yours. How many times have you softened your opinion just to belong? How many times have you smiled at something that didn't feel right, simply to stay included? How many times have you stepped away from your own values because silence felt easier? That is the dye, and it touches us a little more every day. We often fear being canceled or forgotten, but Marcus reminds us to fear something quieter, becoming untrue to ourselves. So how did he fight it? How did a man with the world at his feet keep his feet on the ground? He had a practice, a quiet weapon he returned to every morning. He reminded himself of his own mortality. He wrote, "Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died, and the same thing happened to both. They returned to the earth. They became dust." When you truly understand that your reputation, your wealth, and your power will all fade, something changes. You stop trading your character for them. Why sell your soul for applause when the audience will be gone in 100 years? For Marcus, this thought wasn't dark. It was freeing. It was the only way to gently wash away the purple dye. History tells us that Marcus Aurelius won that war. He didn't lose himself. He remained good in a world that constantly invited him to be otherwise. And he won, because he never stopped paying attention. Tonight, before you fall asleep, ask yourself the same quiet question the emperor asked in the dark. Am I becoming who I intended to be, or who the world is slowly shaping me into? Don't let the world dye your soul. Keep it your own. And if you want a place to return to for these quiet battles, you're welcome to stay with us.